The night after Thanksgiving in Macon, Georgia, the temperature dropped to 38 degrees. The kind of cold that bites through clothes and settles in bones. The kind that makes you hurry from your car to the door. The kind nobody should be standing in barefoot. But 6-year-old Amari Jackson was barefoot. She stood on the jagged gravel outside the Shell station on Pio Nono Avenue, her tiny feet torn open by broken glass. Blood dotted the stones beneath her, dark drops on gray rock. She was 3 feet tall, 40 pounds, big brown eyes that had already seen too much for one lifetime. She wore the same faded pink hoodie she'd had on for 4 days straight. The sleeves swallowed her hands. The hem dragged the filthy ground. It was the only warm thing she owned, and right now it wasn't doing her any good. Because Kurt had her by the throat. One hand. That's all it took. He lifted her clean off the earth like she weighed nothing at all. Her little legs kicked at empty air. Useless. Helpless. Her fingers clawed at his wrist, but she was 6, and he was grown and drunk and mean. The purple spread across her face, like a bruise blooming in fast forward. Her lips parted. A thin sound came out, half gasp, half whistle. The sound of air trying to squeeze through a windpipe, being crushed by a grown man's thumb. 10 feet away, 3-year-old Malik stood frozen in the cold. He wore nothing but a sagging diaper and an oversized t-shirt that hung to his knees. His bare feet were blue on the concrete. His tiny chest heaved. "Sissy! Sissy!" His voice cracked on the second scream, then cracked again. He couldn't stop screaming, couldn't move. Couldn't do anything but watch his sister die in front of him. "You spilled my goddamn beer, you little bitch." Kurt's breath fogged in the cold air, his words slurred together. The bush light he'd dropped lay on its side by the gas pump, foam still bubbling out onto the pavement. $3 worth of cheap beer. That's what Amari's life was worth to him. Inside the station, the clerk looked up, looked at what was happening, looked back down at his phone. The 2 customers at the register did the same. Nobody moved. Nobody called out. In this part of Macon, you minded your business if you wanted to keep breathing. Amari's kicks were getting weaker. The purple was spreading to her ears now. Her eyes were going glassy. Somewhere in the back of her fading mind, she thought about Malik. Thought about what would happen to him when she was gone. Who would hide him in the closet when Kurt got bad? Who would give him the good parts of whatever food they got? Who would tell him Mama was watching from heaven, even though Amari wasn't sure she believed it anymore? Nobody, she thought. Nobody would take care of him. And then she heard it. A rumble. Low at first, like thunder way off on the horizon. Then louder still. The ground itself seemed to vibrate. The beer cans in the gas station cooler rattled against each other. The fluorescent lights above the pumps flickered. 25 Harley-Davidsons rolled into that parking lot like a tsunami made of chrome and leather. They'd just finished the annual Thanksgiving toy run. Teddy bears and baby dolls strapped to their bikes with bungee cords. Bags of donated clothes tied to their sissy bars. They'd spent the whole day riding through the cold, delivering presents to kids at the women's shelter on Forsyth Road. Now, they just wanted coffee, maybe some gas station hot dogs, a chance to warm up before the long ride back to the clubhouse. What they found instead changed everything. Big Mike killed his engine first. He was the president of the Iron Guardians, MC. Had been for 11 years, 6'5", 280 pounds. gray beard down to his chest, hands like dinner plates. He had a tattoo on his neck that said, "Fear none," and a scar across his left cheek from a knife fight in 1987 that he never talked about. He saw those tiny feet first, dangling, kicking, going still. Then he saw the hand. One hand, wrapped around a throat too small to survive it. Then he saw the fingerprints already blooming dark on that little brown neck. Big Mike was off his bike and moving before anyone else took a breath. His boots hit the pavement. Then the gravel. Then he was close enough to smell the beer on Kurt's breath and see the veins standing out on that baby girl's forehead. Behind him, 24 engines died, one by one. 24 kickstands went down. 24 men swung off their bikes. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Every single one of them had seen the same thing Big Mike saw. Rico was second off his bike, ex-Marine, 2 tours in Fallujah. He'd seen children blown apart by IEDs. He thought nothing could shock him anymore. He was wrong. Tiny came next, 400 pounds of prospect. They called him Tiny as a joke. He had hands that could palm a basketball and a voice like a foghorn, and he was crying before his boots touched the ground. Just crying. Tears cutting clean lines through the road dust on his face. Doc moved quiet. He was the club medic. Former Army corpsman, he was already calculating. The bruising, the lack of oxygen. How long until brain damage? How long until death? The math wasn't good. Shadow hung back at first. He was always watching, always thinking. He pulled out his phone and started recording. Evidence. Whatever happened next, there would be a record. But Big Mike didn't care about evidence right now. His voice rolled out across that parking lot, like thunder held back by will alone. Take your hand off that baby. Right now. Kurt turned. His eyes were bloodshot. He swayed a little. He was drunk enough to be stupid and mean enough to be dangerous, and he looked at this wall of leather-clad giants, and he laughed. Mind your own He never finished the sentence. 24 more bikers stepped forward, one step, in unison. The sound of that many boots hitting gravel at once was something you felt in your chest more than heard with your ears. Leather, chains, beards, tattoos. Silence that felt heavier than any roar ever could. Kurt's bloodshot eyes went wide. His cigarette dropped from his slack lips. His fingers, the fingers that had been crushing the life out of a 6-year-old, sprang open like they'd touched a hot stove. Amari dropped. She hit the gravel hard. The glass bit into her shoulder. She curled into a ball and started coughing. Coughing so hard she retched. Her whole body shook. The purple started fading from her face, replaced by a deep, heaving red as oxygen flooded back into her starving lungs. Malik ran. His wobbly 3-year-old legs carried him across those 10 feet of frozen ground as fast as they could go. He fell once, got up, kept running. When he reached his sister, he threw his 30 pounds over her body like a shield. Like his tiny self could protect her from anything. Like he hadn't just watched her almost die. "Sissy," he whimpered. "Sissy, sissy, sissy." Kurt took a step back, then another. His tough guy act had lasted exactly 4 seconds. Now he was looking at 25 men who had seen exactly what he'd done. 25 men who weren't looking away. 25 men who weren't minding their own business. 25 men who looked like they wanted to tear him apart with their bare hands. "Look, man, this ain't... She's my kid, all right? I can... Shut up." Big Mike's voice was quiet now. that was somehow worse than the thunder. He moved past Kurt like the man wasn't even worth looking at, stepped over the dropped cigarette, stepped around the spilled beer, knelt down on that jagged gravel like it was nothing. He made himself small as a man his size could make himself. He held his huge hands out, palms open, fingers spread, so she could see they were empty, so she could see they weren't a threat. "Hey, little one," his voice cracked on the words. This man, who had stared down rival clubs and crooked cops and his own demons for 47 years, his voice cracked, talking to a 6-year-old girl. "I'm Mike. You're safe now. I swear on everything I love. Can you tell me your name?" Amari tried to speak. Her mouth opened. Her lips formed a word, but nothing came out except a broken croak. The bruises on her neck were already darkening. Kurt's fingerprints, preserved in purple and black, wrapped around her throat like a necklace made of nightmares. She pointed to her throat, touched it gently, winced. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She'd learned a long time ago that crying made it worse. Then she looked at Malik, still draped over her, still whimpering her name. She wrapped both her tiny arms around her baby brother and held him tight, drew strength from the one person in the world she had left. And when she spoke, her voice was raw, ragged, barely a whisper, but every single biker heard it. "Please," she coughed, swallowed, tried again. "Please, don't let him take us back." Big Mike's jaw tightened. His hands, still held out, still open, still gentle, trembled slightly. "He kills us slow when nobody's watching." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The gas station lights flickered overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked. The world kept turning, indifferent and cold. But in that parking lot, in that moment, something shifted, something that could never shift back. Big Mike looked at this broken little girl, looked at the blood on her feet, the bruises on her neck, the scars he couldn't see yet but somehow knew were there. He looked at her baby brother, shivering in a diaper, in 38-degree weather, trying to protect her with a body that couldn't protect itself. And something inside Big Mike, something he thought had died a long time ago, in a different parking lot, with a different child he couldn't save, roared back to life. He didn't look at his brothers. He didn't need to. "You're safe now," he said again. And this time, his voice didn't crack. This time, it was a promise. The kind of promise men like him didn't break. "We got you." The Waffle House on Vineville Avenue was half empty at 9:47 p.m. A tired waitress named Dolores worked the counter. 2 truckers sat in a booth by the window, arguing about football. The fluorescent lights hummed that particular hum that every Waffle House in Georgia seems to share. Then 25 bikers walked in with 2 shivering children, and everything stopped. Dolores took one look at Amari's neck, one look at Malik's blue feet, one look at Big Mike's face. She didn't ask questions. She just pointed to the big corner booth in the back and said, "Coffee's on me. Whatever those babies need." They took up 3 booths and half the counter, leather and chrome and road dust everywhere. But their voices stayed low. Their movements stayed soft. Every single one of them was aware of the 2 tiny humans in their midst, and every single one of them was trying not to scare them any more than they'd already been scared. Doc slid into the booth across from Amari and Malik. He moved slow, kept his hands visible. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm Doc. I used to be a medic in the Army. That means I know how to help people who are hurt. Can I look at your feet? Amari clutched Malik tighter. Her eyes darted to Big Mike, who had positioned himself at the end of the booth like a guard dog. He nodded once. He's good people, Big Mike said. Won't hurt you. Just wants to help. Amari studied Doc's face for a long moment. Then she slowly extended one small foot from under the table. Doc's jaw tightened when he saw it. The cuts weren't deep, but there were a lot of them. Glass and gravel embedded in the sole. Dried blood cracked and fresh blood still seeping. This child had been walking on wounds for who knows how long. He pulled a first aid kit from inside his cut, started cleaning the cuts with gentle hands. Amari didn't make a sound, didn't flinch. That bothered Doc more than anything. A 6-year-old should cry when someone cleans glass out of her feet. A 6-year-old should react. This one had learned not to. Dolores brought hot chocolate in a grown-up mug, real whipped cream on top. The works. She set it down in front of Amari with a smile that didn't quite hide the tears in her eyes. There you go, baby. That'll warm you right up. Amari stared at the mug like it might bite her. Then she wrapped both hands around it. Her fingers barely met on the other side, and lifted it carefully. The whipped cream left a little mustache on her upper lip, but she didn't drink. Instead, she turned and held the mug out to Malik. Here, baby. You first. Babies need it more. Malik's little hands grabbed the mug. He took a big gulp. Hot chocolate spilled down his chin. He didn't care. It was warm and sweet, and probably the first good thing he'd had in days. Rico watched from the next booth over. He was 43 years old. He'd done 2 tours in Fallujah with the Marines. He'd held friends while they died. He'd seen things that still woke him up screaming. He thought he was hard. Thought he was past feeling. Watching a 6-year-old give away her hot chocolate because she'd been conditioned to put everyone else first, that cracked something in him. Tiny sat at the counter, facing the door. 400 pounds of prospect, and he was crying again. Not sobbing, just a steady leak of tears down his round face. He didn't wipe them away, didn't seem to notice them at all. Shadow stood by the window, phone still out, still recording. But his other hand was shaking, the hand that wasn't holding the phone. Big Mike hadn't moved from his spot at the end of the booth. He hadn't spoken since they sat down. He just watched Amari, watched her give her brother the first sip, watched her check the door every 30 seconds, watched her position herself between Malik and every adult in the room. She was 6 years old, and she had the survival instincts of someone who'd been hunted. Doc finished with her feet, wrapped them in clean gauze. Then he looked at Big Mike with something in his eyes that was harder than tears. Her throat needs ice. And Mike, he paused, swallowed. I need to see her back. Big Mike's hands curled into fists on the table, then relaxed, then curled again. Amari. His voice was sandpaper and broken glass. Doc needs to look at your back, baby girl, to see if you're hurt. Can you show him? Amari froze. Her whole body went rigid. Malik felt it and pressed closer to her. You don't have to, Doc said quickly. Not if you don't want. But if you're hurt, I want to help. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then Amari reached down with her small hands, grabbed the hem of her pink hoodie, and lifted it just high enough. Doc made a sound, low and strangled, like someone had punched him in the gut. Rico saw it from the next booth. He stood up so fast he knocked over his coffee, walked straight to the back door, pushed through it. They heard him vomiting behind the dumpster. Tiny stopped crying. His face just went blank. like his brain had to shut down to protect itself from what his eyes were seeing. Shadow lowered his phone. For once he didn't record. Some things weren't meant to be kept. Big Mike looked. He forced himself to look. Across Amari's back, from her shoulder blades to her spine, was a row of perfect circles, burn marks, some old and scarred over, shiny pink against her brown skin. Some newer, still scabbed. One looked fresh, the angry red of a wound that wasn't more than a week old. Cigarette burns, a row of them, like someone had used this child's body as an ashtray. Amari let the hoodie fall. Her face showed nothing, no pain, no shame, no anger, just the blank mask of a child who had learned that feelings were dangerous. "Kurt does that when I wet the bed," she said. Her voice was flat, matter of fact, like she was explaining how to tie shoes. "He says it teaches me. I try not to have accidents, but sometimes, when the dreams are real bad, I can't help it." Doc's hands were shaking now. He grabbed the edge of the table to steady them. "How long?" Big Mike's voice was barely human. "How long has he been hurting you?" Amari tilted her head, thinking. "Mama died last Christmas. She was in the bathroom. I found her." A pause. "Kurt said it was my fault. Said I cried too loud that night and stressed her out. Said that's why she took the pills." Every man at those tables felt something crack inside his chest. After the funeral, he started hitting me with the belt. For respect. Then he used his fists when I was too slow. Then the cigarettes when I wet the bed. She recited it like a list she'd memorized. A terrible homework assignment she'd been forced to learn. Doc wrote it down. His handwriting was shaky, but he kept writing. Evidence, documentation, something to give the authorities. "Is there anything else?" Big Mike asked. He didn't want to ask. He could see in the child's eyes that there was more. And he knew, somehow, in his gut, he knew that what came next would be worse than everything before it. Amari looked at Malik. He was drowsy now, warm for the first time in days, the hot chocolate making his eyelids heavy. His head nodded against her arm. She waited until his breathing got slow and deep. Then she leaned forward. Her voice dropped to something barely louder than a breath. Every man at those tables had to lean in to hear. "At night," she whispered, "when Malik's sleeping." She stopped, her throat moved. Even after what she'd been through, even with a voice that could barely make sound, this was hard for her to say. "Kurt comes in my bed." The room went cold, colder than the November night outside. "He touches me, down there." Her hand moved vaguely toward her lap. "He says I'm his girlfriend now that Mama's gone." She paused, swallowed. "He says if I ever tell anyone, he'll choke Malik till he stops moving forever. He'll make me watch. Then he'll do it to me, too." She said it flat. No emotion, no tears. Like reciting a multiplication table she'd learned through repetition and fear. And that flatness, that complete absence of affect in a 6-year-old describing her own rape was somehow the worst part of all. Rico came back inside, saw the faces of his brothers. Didn't ask what he'd missed. He didn't need to. The answer was written in the way Big Mike's knuckles had gone white on the table edge. Tiny wasn't crying anymore. His face had changed, gone from soft to stone, from gentle giant to something older, something harder. Doc had stopped writing. His pen lay on the table. His hands covered his face. And Big Mike didn't cry. He went still, the kind of still that mountains go right before they fall. right before the avalanche comes crashing down and buries everything in its path. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed very loud. Somewhere in the kitchen, a cook dropped a pan. The clang made everyone jump except Amari. She just kept holding her sleeping brother, protecting him even now, especially now. Big Mike pulled out his phone. "Tanya," he said when the line connected. His voice was steady, too steady. "I need you at the Waffle House on Vineville, now." A pause. "Bring blankets. And that teddy bear from the guest room, the soft one." Another pause, longer this time. "Yeah, it's bad. Worse than bad." He hung up, looked at Amari. "My wife's coming. She's going to sit with you for a while. She's soft, warm, safe, I promise you." Amari studied his face, looking for the lie. She'd gotten good at spotting lies. She didn't find one. 20 minutes later, a silver Honda Accord pulled into the parking lot. A black woman in her early 40s got out. She was round and warm-looking, with kind eyes and silver threads in her natural hair. She carried 2 fleece blankets and a well-loved teddy bear with a missing eye. Tanya Mitchell had been married to Big Mike for 18 years. She'd seen a lot in those years, patched up a lot of wounds, held a lot of hands. But when she walked into that Waffle House and saw the little girl with the bruised throat and the haunted eyes, something in her heart opened up and swallowed that child whole. She didn't rush, didn't crowd. She just slid into the booth beside Amari, moving slow, keeping her hands visible, just like the men had done. "Hi, baby. I'm Tanya, Mike's wife." She held up the teddy bear. "This is Button. He's missing an eye because my dog chewed it off when I was little, but he's still the best hugger I know. You want to hold him?" Amari looked at the bear, at its missing eye, at its worn fur, at this soft woman who smelled like cocoa butter and something else, something familiar. "You smell like cookies," Amari whispered. Tanya smiled, the kind of smile that could break your heart and heal it at the same time. "I was baking before Mike called. Snickerdoodles, my specialty. You like snickerdoodles?" Amari nodded slowly, then reached out and took Button, pressed him against her chest. Her eyes fluttered closed for just a second. It was the first time anyone had seen her relax since the parking lot. Tanya wrapped a blanket around Amari's shoulders, wrapped another around Malik, who was fully asleep now, still clutching the mug with cold chocolate at the bottom. Then she looked at Big Mike over the children's heads. The look that passed between husband and wife in that moment needed no words. They had 3 grown children of their own, a good life, a full life. They weren't looking for more responsibility, more heartache, more reasons to stay up at night worrying. But sometimes life doesn't care what you're looking for. Sometimes life puts a 6-year-old with cigarette burns on her back right in front of you and dares you to look away. Big Mike couldn't look away. Neither could Tanya. Not then, not ever. His name was Curtis Randall. Kurt to everyone who knew him. He was 34 years old, born and raised in Macon. Worked at the chicken plant on Rocky Creek Road when he felt like working. Sold a little weed on the side, nothing major, just enough to keep the lights on and the beer flowing. He'd met Amari's mother, Denise, at a cookout 2 summers back. She was pretty, lonely, just out of a bad relationship with Amari's biological father, who'd disappeared before Malik was even born. Denise was tired of doing everything alone. Tired of working double shifts at the nursing home. Tired of coming home to an empty bed. Kurt was charming when he wanted to be. He had a nice smile and strong arms, and he knew how to make a woman feel wanted. Those first few months were good. Great, even. He brought flowers. He played with the kids. He fixed the leak under the kitchen sink and didn't even ask for anything in return. Denise thought she'd finally found one of the good ones. She was wrong. It started small. A comment about her outfit. A question about where she'd been. A suggestion, gentle at first, that maybe she didn't need to spend so much time with her sister. Her sister was a bad influence. Her sister talked too much. Her sister didn't like Kurt, and that meant she didn't really love Denise. Then the comments got sharper, the questions got louder, the suggestions became demands. By the time Denise realized what was happening, she was already isolated, already dependent, already scared. The first time Kurt hit her was over a grocery bill. The second time was because dinner was cold. The third time, he didn't even bother with an excuse. Denise started using pills to cope. A few at first, then more, then whatever she could get her hands on. Kurt didn't mind. The drugs made her easier to control, made her forget the bruises, made her stop asking questions. The children learned to be invisible. Amari, especially. She learned which footsteps meant danger, which tone of voice meant hide, which look in Kurt's eye meant take Malik to the closet and stay there until morning. She was 5 years old when she learned those things. 5 years old and already fluent in survival. Then last Christmas, Denise died. They said it was an accidental overdose. They said she took too many pills. They said it was a tragedy. Amari knew the truth. She'd heard Kurt and her mother fighting that night, heard the crash, heard the silence that came after. When she crept to the bathroom the next morning, she found her mother on the floor, eyes open and empty, a needle still in her arm. She was 5 years old. She didn't understand what a needle in an arm meant. She just knew her mama wouldn't wake up. Kurt called 911, played the grieving boyfriend, wiped his eyes, and said all the right things. When CPS came to check on the children 2 weeks later, he had the house clean and food in the fridge and a sob story ready about how he was just trying to keep Denise's babies together. He'd coached Amari beforehand, told her exactly what to say, told her what would happen if she said anything else. The caseworker was overworked and undertrained. She saw a clean house and a crying man and 2 kids who said, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, ma'am," in all the right places. She closed the case and moved on to the next one. Nobody came back to check. The neighbors knew something was wrong. The walls in that trailer were thin. They heard things. They heard things, and they turned up their TVs and minded their own business, because Kurt sold weed to some of them. Because Kurt knew people who knew people. Because in that part of Macon, getting involved meant getting hurt. So Amari suffered. And Malik suffered. And Kurt did whatever he wanted. Because nobody was going to stop him. Because he had those kids all to himself now. Because in his twisted mind, they belonged to him. He'd bought them, hadn't he? Paid Denise's bills for 2 years. Put food in their mouths. Put a roof over their heads. They owed him. That's what he told himself. That's what he told Amari when she cried. "You owe me, little girl, and I always collect what I'm owed." Back in the Waffle House, the clock on the wall read 10:23 p.m. Doc had finished his assessment, written his notes. Now he sat with his head in his hands, running through the same thoughts over and over, the same terrible calculations. "Mike," his voice was hoarse, "we got problems." Big Mike looked up from where he sat. Amari had fallen asleep against Tanya's side, button clutched to her chest. Malik was still out cold. For the first time in God knows how long, both children were warm, safe, and sleeping. Talk. That piece of trash has legal custody. Technically, those kids are supposed to be with him right now. If he calls the cops, says we kidnapped them, we save them. I know that. You know that. But the system. Doc shook his head. The system sees a bunch of bikers who took 2 kids from their legal guardian. The system sees felony kidnapping. The system doesn't care about cigarette burns and worse. Rico leaned forward. He ain't gonna call the cops. He knows what he did. He knows we know. Maybe not. A man like that, drunk, scared, cornered, he might do anything. And if CPS gets involved, before we can document everything proper, those kids could end up in foster care, separated. Doc's voice cracked on the last word. Malik's too young to testify. It'll be Amari's word against a grown man's. Big Mike's hands flexed on the table. Open. Closed. Open. Closed. What about the burns? What about her neck? Physical evidence of abuse, yes, but it doesn't prove who did it. A good lawyer, hell, even a bad lawyer, could muddy those waters. And you know how the system treats kids like her. Black kids, poor kids, kids with a dead mother and no father in the picture. Doc's voice was bitter. They fall through the cracks every damn time. Tiny spoke up from the counter. His voice was thick, rougher than usual. What about us? Some of the brothers got records. I'm still on parole. If this goes sideways... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Big Mike knew. Half the club had done time. Assault. Possession. A few worse things in the distant past. If this turned into a legal battle, their history would be used against them, used against those children. So what? Rico's jaw was tight. We just hand them back? Let that monster finish what he started? Nobody said that. Big Mike's voice was low, dangerous. Nobody's handing anybody back. Not tonight. Not ever. He stood up, looked around at his brothers. 24 men who'd ridden through cold and dark for a toy run. 24 men who'd stumbled into a nightmare. 24 men who were now looking at him for answers. Here's what we're gonna do. Doc, you keep documenting everything. Photos, notes, timestamps. Rico, you still got that contact at the PD? The detective from your VA group? Rico nodded. Martinez, good cop. One of the few. Call her. Tell her what we got. See if we can get ahead of this legally. Big Mike turned to Shadow. You got video from the parking lot? Every second. Good. Don't lose it. He looked at Tiny. I need you here, watching those babies. Anybody comes through that door that ain't us, you make sure they don't get near them kids. Tiny straightened up. 400 pounds of purpose. Nobody's touching them. Big Mike walked to the booth where his wife sat with the sleeping children. He crouched down, eye level with Amari, even though she was asleep. We're gonna handle this, he said quietly, to Tanya, to himself, to whatever power in the universe might be listening. We're gonna handle this right. Tanya reached out and took his hand, squeezed it once. I know you will. But Amari wasn't asleep. Her eyes were open. Just a sliver. She'd learned a long time ago to fake sleep, to listen when grown-ups thought she couldn't hear. She'd heard everything. You promise? Her voice was small, barely a whisper, but it made Big Mike's heart clench in his chest. He turned to look at her, those big brown eyes, old beyond their years, watching him, testing him, waiting for the lie she was sure would come, because grown-ups always lied. Grown-ups always made promises they didn't keep. Grown-ups always left. You promise? She asked again, because grown-ups always break promises. Big Mike didn't hesitate. I ain't grown-ups. He reached out, slow. Let her see the hand coming. Let her make the choice to take it or not. She took it. Her tiny fingers wrapped around two of his, barely covered his knuckles. I'm your people now, he said. And my people don't break promises. Not to babies. Not ever. Amari stared at him for a long moment, searching, looking for the crack, the flaw, the place where the lie would leak through. She didn't find it. She didn't find it because it wasn't there. Something in her chest loosened. Just a little, just enough. A knot she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. She squeezed his fingers, closed her eyes, let herself fall back to sleep. For the first time in a year, Amari Jackson slept without being afraid of what would happen when she woke up. If you believe that sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Biker's Bite and hit that notification bell, because this is just the beginning of Amari's story. And trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. The Iron Guardians Clubhouse sat on a dead-end street in East Macon, a converted warehouse with a reinforced front door and security cameras at every corner. It wasn't pretty, but it was theirs. And tonight, it was a war room. Big Mike stood at the head of the long wooden table, the same table where they'd voted on prospects and settled disputes and mourned their dead. Now it was covered with papers, phones, and a legal pad filled with Doc's shaky handwriting. 24 men sat around that table. 24 men who should have been home with their families the night after Thanksgiving. 24 men who weren't going anywhere. Tanya had taken the children to the back room, the one they used for overnight guests. It had a real bed, not a cot, and thick walls that muffled sound. Malik was already asleep again. Amari was fighting it, but her eyes kept closing against her will. Stay with me, she'd whispered to Tanya, holding her hand so tight her knuckles went white. Please stay. I'm not going anywhere, baby. Not ever. In the main room, Big Mike laid out the situation. Here's where we're at. That piece of garbage has legal custody. We got video of him choking a 6-year-old. We got burns, bruises, and worse documented. But if we move wrong, this whole thing falls apart. He pointed to Doc. You got everything? Doc nodded. His eyes were red. He hadn't cried. Doc never cried. But something in him had broken tonight, and it showed. Photos of every injury, the burns, the bruises on her neck, the cuts on her feet. I wrote down everything she told us. Time-stamped. It ain't official, but it's something. It's more than something. Big Mike turned to Rico. Your cop friend, Martinez. She answer? Rico held up his phone. She's on her way, off duty, but she said she'd come. Said if half of what I told her is true, she'll push for an emergency warrant tonight. He paused. She's bringing a forensic interviewer. Someone trained to talk to kids. A woman. Good. That's good. Big Mike looked around the table. Shadow. You still got eyes on him? Shadow sat in the corner, phone in hand, expression unreadable. Got Preacher and Dodge sitting 2 blocks from the trailer. He's still there, drinking on the porch. Hasn't called anyone yet. No cops, no nothing. Just sitting there like nothing happened. That's going to change. Big Mike's voice was cold. Tiny, you're staying here. You don't leave those kids for anything. Someone comes through that door that ain't us, that ain't cops we trust. You handle it." Tiny cracked his knuckles. The sound was like branches breaking. "Nobody's getting near them." Big Mike turned to the man at the end of the table. Older than the rest. Gray suit, no cut. He looked out of place among all the leather and chrome, but he was there, present, waiting. "Roland, talk to me." Roland Washington was a lawyer, criminal defense mostly. He'd done work for the club over the years. Nothing dirty. The Guardians weren't that kind of club, but he knew them, knew what they were about, knew they paid their bills and kept their word. He also owed Big Mike a personal debt, the kind that couldn't be repaid with money. "Here's the situation," Roland said. "Legally, you're on thin ice. Those kids belong to Kurt Randall until a court says otherwise. Taking them was technically kidnapping, even if you had the best reasons in the world." The room tensed, hands curled into fists. "But," Roland held up a finger, "Georgia law has provisions for emergency protective custody in cases of immediate danger to a child. If we can get a judge to sign off tonight, and with the evidence Doc's gathered, we might, then you become temporary guardians, pending investigation. That changes everything." "How do we get a judge tonight? It's almost 11. "I know a family court judge, Paula Hendricks. She's tough but fair, and she doesn't sleep much. If Detective Martinez can get an emergency warrant, and we can present the evidence properly, Hendricks might hear us tonight." Big Mike nodded slowly. "Make the calls, all of them, whatever it takes." Roland was already pulling out his phone. Doc was organizing his notes. Rico was texting Martinez their location. Shadow was coordinating with the watchers outside Kurt's trailer. The machine was moving. Detective Maria Martinez arrived at 11:47 p.m. She was in her 40s, with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd been a cop for 22 years. She'd seen things, bad things, but when Doc showed her the photos on his phone, she still had to look away. Jesus Christ! "It gets worse." Rico's voice was flat. "A lot worse." He told her what Amari had said, the words she'd whispered in the diner. Martinez listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I need to talk to her, the girl, but gently, and not with all of you in the room." "The forensic interviewer?" "She's meeting me here in 20 minutes. Woman named Dr. Lisa Odom. She works with abused kids. She's good. Patient. Won't push." Big Mike led Martinez to the back room. Amari was awake again, sitting up in bed with button clutched to her chest. Malik was curled beside her, finally sleeping deep and still. Tanya sat in a chair by the bed. She hadn't let go of Amari's hand. Martinez crouched down to Amari's level, same way Big Mike had in the parking lot. "Hi, sweetheart. My name is Maria. I'm a police officer. I'm here to help you." Amari's eyes darted to Big Mike. "She's good," he said. "She's not going to hurt you. None of us are going to let anyone hurt you again." Amari looked at the detective, at her badge, at her face. "Are you going to make me go back?" Martinez's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in her cheek. "No, baby, you're never going back there. I promise you that." Big Mike promised too. "Then you've got 2 promises. And I don't break mine either." When Dr. Odom arrived, a black woman in her 50s with gray locks and a voice like warm honey, she spent the first 10 minutes just sitting with Amari, not asking questions, not pushing, just being present. Then, slowly, carefully, she started talking, and Amari started talking back. It took almost 2 hours. Dr. Odom recorded everything on a small device. She never interrupted, never showed shock or horror, even when the words coming out of that 6-year-old's mouth would have broken most people. She just listened, nodded, asked gentle follow-up questions when Amari paused. When it was done, Dr. Odom stepped out of the room. Her face was composed, professional, but her hands were shaking. "I've been doing this for 27 years, she said quietly to Martinez and Big Mike. "That child has experienced some of the worst abuse I've ever documented, and she told it like she was reading a grocery list. No child should be that numb. No child should have to be." She handed the recording to Martinez. "You get him, whatever it takes. You get that monster." At 2:14 a.m., Big Mike made a phone call. Kurt answered on the 4th ring. His voice was slurred, scared, trying to sound tough. "Who the hell? You know who this is?" Silence on the other end, the sound of a bottle being set down. "Look, man, I don't want no trouble. Those kids, they're mine. Legally, they're mine. And if you don't bring them back, shut up." Big Mike's voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that made men who'd done hard time go cold. "I'm not calling to argue with you. I'm calling to tell you what's about to happen. You're gonna sign papers. Papers that give up every right you think you have to those babies. You're gonna do it tonight. And then you're gonna disappear out of their lives, out of this state, out of existence, as far as we're concerned." Kurt's breathing was ragged on the line. "You can't do this. You can't just... I'll call the cops. I'll tell them you took my kids. I'll do it." Big Mike's voice was dead calm, dead certain. "Call them. Tell them whatever you want. And while you're on the phone, we'll tell them about the burns, the bruises, the things you did to her at night when her brother was sleeping." The line went silent. "We have evidence, photos, video, testimony. A detective who wants your head on a pike. You call the cops, you're not getting those kids back. You're getting a cell. For a very long time. And you know what they do to child molesters in prison, don't you, Kurt?" A sound on the other end, halfway between a whimper and a moan. "So here's what's going to happen. We're coming to you, right now. You're going to sign the papers our lawyer drew up. You're going to surrender any claim you ever had to those children. And then you're going to run. Fast and far. Because if you're still in Georgia, when the sun comes up, I can't promise what happens next. You can't. This isn't, we're coming for you, Kurt. Not to hurt you. To end you. Legally. Permanently." Big Mike paused. Let the silence stretch. "You're done." He hung up, turned to his brothers. "Mount up." At 2:47 a.m., 25 Harley-Davidsons killed their engines 2 blocks from Kurt's trailer. The neighborhood was dead quiet. Streetlights flickered overhead. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, then went silent. Frost glittered on dead grass and rusted cars. They walked the rest of the way. 25 men in leather and chains, boots quiet on frozen dirt. Their breath made clouds in the cold air. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Kurt was on the porch. He'd heard them coming. Even without the engines, he'd felt them. 25 sets of footsteps moving through the dark like something out of a nightmare. He was trying to look tough. Standing there with a cigarette in his shaking hand, swaying slightly from the booze. A baseball bat leaned against the railing beside him. Like that would help. The bikers formed a half circle around the trailer. Silent. Still. A wall of leather and muscle and barely contained rage. Big Mike stepped forward. In his hand, he held Amari's pink hoodie. The one she'd been wearing for 4 days, the one with her blood still speckling the fabric, the one that smelled like fear and gas station gravel and things no child should know. He held it up so Kurt could see. You know what this is. Kurt's cigarette fell from his lips. He didn't pick it up. These kids ain't going back with you, ever. Big Mike's voice carried across the frozen yard. Not loud. He didn't need to be loud. Every word landed like a hammer on stone. You're going to sign papers tonight. Papers that say you give up all rights, all claims, everything. And then you're going to leave. You're going to leave Georgia and never come back. And if you ever try to contact those children again, we'll be there. At the liquor store when you walk in. At the gas station when you pump. At your mama's funeral, if it comes to that. He stepped closer. His boots crunched on the frozen dirt. You will never be alone again. Every shadow will be us. Every rumble will be us. Every stranger looking at you too long will be us. Kurt's bravado lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then it crumbled. His eyes darted to the half-circle of giants surrounding his home. To Tiny, cracking knuckles the size of ham hocks. To Rico, whose hand was swollen and purple from punching a wall back at the clubhouse. To Shadow, who wasn't even looking at him, just watching the road, calm and deadly. To Big Mike's eyes, dead calm, dead certain. The eyes of a man who had made a decision and would see it through no matter what. Kurt's knees buckled. He grabbed the porch railing to keep from falling. The cigarette butt smoldered on the wooden planks, forgotten. His whole body was shaking now, not from the cold. Please, his voice cracked. Please, man, I didn't. She's lying. She's just a kid. Kids lie. You can't believe. I believe her. 3 words. Quiet. Final. I believe every word that came out of that baby's mouth. And so do the cops. And so will a judge. And so will every man in whatever prison you end up in. Kurt made a sound, high and thin, like a wounded animal. And then it happened. A dark stain spread down the front of his jeans, started at the crotch and moved down his thigh. The ammonia smell cut through the cold air. Curtis Randall, 34 years old, tough guy, woman beater, child abuser, pissed himself on his own porch in front of 25 men. Big Mike didn't even blink. Papers now! Roland stepped forward. He'd driven separately, parked down the block. In his hand was a folder. Inside the folder were documents that would surrender Curtis Randall's parental rights, effective immediately. Kurt's hands shook so bad he could barely hold the pen. Tears and snot ran down his face. He signed where Roland pointed. Again. 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 The papers went onto the hood of Kurt's rusted truck. Kurt's signature went on every line, witnessed by 25 men and a lawyer who made sure every I was dotted and every T was crossed. When it was done, Kurt collapsed against his truck, sobbing, begging, a broken thing that used to be a man. Big Mike looked at him. He didn't hit him, didn't touch him, didn't need to. The breaking was complete. You've got till sunrise. After that, you're Martinez's problem. He turned his back on Curtis Randall, walked away. His brothers followed. 25 men walking through the dark. 25 engines starting up 2 blocks away. 25 sets of headlights disappearing into the Georgia night. Behind them, Kurt sat in his own piss and sobbed. Before we see what happens next, hit that like button if you're rooting for Amari. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your engagement helps us bring more stories like this to people who need to hear them. Detective Martinez arrived at Kurt's trailer at 6:17 a.m. She had a warrant in her hand and 2 patrol cars behind her. Kurt was still there. He'd tried to pack. 2 bags sat by the door, half full. But he hadn't made it out, hadn't been able to move. He'd just sat on the couch all night, staring at the wall, waiting for whatever came next. When Martinez knocked, he opened the door like a sleepwalker. "Curtis Randall?" He nodded. His eyes were empty. "You're under arrest for aggravated child abuse, aggravated sexual battery of a minor, assault, and criminal neglect. You have the right to remain silent." The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. While they loaded Kurt into the patrol car, Martinez's team searched the trailer. It didn't take long to find what they were looking for. Amari's room, if you could call it that, was barely bigger than a closet. A mattress on the floor with no sheets. A single blanket, thin and stained. No toys, no books, no pictures on the wall. Nothing that said a child lived there except the smallness of the space. They found the belt Kurt used, stained with blood. They found cigarette butts in an ashtray by the mattress. The same brand as the burns on Amari's back. They found things under Kurt's mattress that Martinez didn't want to describe. Things that made even veteran cops go quiet. By 7:30 a.m., they had enough evidence to put Curtis Randall away for a very long time. The ride back to the clubhouse was different. 25 bikes escorted Tanya's silver Accord through the gray morning streets. Amari sat in the back seat with Malik, watching through the window as the motorcycles rumbled alongside them. "Are they really all here for us?" Her voice was small, wondering. Tanya looked at her in the rearview mirror, smiled. "Every single one, baby girl. Every single one." Amari was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took Malik's hand. He was awake now, watching the bikes with wide eyes. Not scared. Fascinated. "Mama," Malik said. Not to Tanya. To no one. Just the word itself, floating in the car. "Mama." Tanya's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back. "That's right, sweetheart. I've got you, both of you." That first night at Big Mike and Tanya's house was strange. It was a real house. A ranch-style 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. Yellow paint, white trim. A porch with rocking chairs. The kind of house Amari had only seen on TV. The guest room had been transformed in the hours they were gone. A small bed with butterfly sheets. A nightlight shaped like a moon. Toys in a basket in the corner. Donations from club members' wives who'd heard the story and wanted to help. Amari stood in the doorway, afraid to step inside. "It's for you," Tanya said softly. "Both of you, for as long as you need it." Malik ran in without hesitation, grabbed a stuffed dinosaur from the basket, started making it roar and stomp across the butterfly comforter. Amari watched him be a normal 3-year-old for maybe the first time in his life. Then she walked in, touched the sheets, touched the nightlight, touched everything like she expected it to disappear. "It's real," Tanya said. "It's all real. You're safe now." Amari didn't answer. She just climbed into bed beside Malik, still wearing her borrowed pajamas, and pulled the covers up to her chin. "Can you leave the door open?" "Of course, baby." "And the light?" "The night light's on, see? It'll stay on all night." "Okay." Amari's eyes closed, then opened, then closed again. She was asleep in minutes. Malik, too, curled against her side, the stuffed dinosaur clutched to his chest. Tanya stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching them breathe. Big Mike appeared beside her. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, one arm around his wife, looking at the 2 children who had stumbled into their lives like a hurricane made of heartbreak. Then he walked to the end of the hallway, sat down on the floor, back against the wall, facing the door. "Mike, what are you doing?" "Staying." "You should sleep. The bedroom." "I'm staying here." Tanya looked at her husband, at the dark circles under his eyes, at the tension in his shoulders, at the way his hands were still curled into fists. She didn't argue. She just brought him a pillow and a blanket and kissed his forehead. "You're a good man, Michael Mitchell." "Don't know about that. Just doing what needs doing." He sat there all night, awake, alert, watching that door, waiting for a threat that never came. In the morning, Amari woke slowly. The light through the curtains was soft and gold. The bed was warm. For one beautiful moment, she forgot where she was, forgot what had happened, forgot everything except the feeling of being safe. Then she remembered. She sat up, looked around, saw Malik still sleeping beside her, saw the butterfly sheets, saw the moon nightlight, still glowing faintly in the dawn. She got out of bed and padded to the door, peered into the hallway. Big Mike was still there, still sitting against the wall. His chin had dropped to his chest. His eyes were closed. But when Amari's foot touched the hallway floor, he was awake instantly, alert, looking. He saw her standing there in her borrowed pajamas, too big and bunched at the ankles. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were puffy. The bruises on her neck had turned from purple to a sickly yellow-green. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "You stayed," she said. "I stayed." "All night?" "All night." Amari was quiet for a moment, processing. This giant man with the scary tattoos and the leather and the beard had sat on the floor all night. For her, for Malik, just in case. She walked to him, slow, careful, like approaching a wild animal she wasn't quite sure about. Then she reached out and took his hand. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. They just stayed there for a minute. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his huge ones, while the morning light crept down the hallway, and Malik snored softly in the butterfly room. It was enough. It was more than enough. The next 48 hours moved fast, with the evidence, with the testimony. With 25 bikers showing up to every hearing in full colors, the system that usually moved like cold honey suddenly found its gears. Judge Paula Hendricks reviewed the case in emergency session. She looked at the photos, watched the interview video, read Doc's notes and Martinez's report. She looked at Big Mike and Tanya, sitting in the front row, looked at the gallery behind them, standing room only with men in leather cuts who looked like they'd tear the courthouse apart if she made the wrong call. She looked at Amari, sitting between them, clutching Tanya's hand and whispering, "Mama Tanya," so quietly you almost couldn't hear it. The judge didn't hesitate. Emergency protective custody granted to Michael and Tanya Mitchell, pending full foster certification review. Curtis Randall's parental rights are hereby terminated, effective immediately. The gavel fell. Amari flinched at the sound, then realized what it meant. She looked up at Tanya, at Big Mike, at the room full of giants who had come for her. "It's over? It's over, baby." Tanya pulled her close. "You're ours now. Forever." Kurt didn't wait for sentencing. 48 hours after the judge's ruling, he was gone. Fled in the middle of the night, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the fear in his bones. Some said he went to Florida. Some said dead in a ditch somewhere outside Valdosta. Nobody looked very hard. Curtis Randall had ceased to exist, and no one in Macon missed him. The first week was the hardest. Big Mike and Tanya's house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a backyard with a swing set their own kids had outgrown years ago. It was quiet, clean, safe. Amari didn't trust any of it. She checked the locks every night, front door, back door, windows, even the garage. She'd make her rounds like a tiny security guard, testing each handle, making sure everything was sealed tight. She slept with her shoes on. Those little black boots the club had bought her, she wouldn't take them off, not even in bed. Tanya tried once, gently, after Amari had fallen asleep. Tried to slip them off so she'd be more comfortable. Amari woke up screaming, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I just wanted you to be comfortable." "Need my shoes?" Amari's voice was raw, shaking. "Need them in case we have to run." Tanya's heart broke for the 100th time that week. Okay, sweetheart. You can keep them on, whatever you need." She found food hidden everywhere, crackers under the mattress, an apple in the closet, pieces of bread wrapped in napkins and tucked into shoes. Amari was stockpiling, preparing for the hunger she was sure would come. The first real meal was Thanksgiving leftovers. Tanya had saved plates from the holiday dinner, knowing the children would need something hearty. She warmed up turkey and mashed potatoes and green beans and set it in front of Amari with a glass of milk. Amari ate like she'd never seen food before. She shoveled it in with both hands, barely chewing, barely breathing. Gravy ran down her chin. Potatoes smeared across her cheeks. She ate and ate and ate until her stomach couldn't hold any more. Then she was sick. Tanya held her hair back while she threw up in the bathroom, rubbing small circles on her back, murmuring soft things. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. You ate too fast. Your tummy's not used to all that food." "I'm sorry." Amari was crying now. "I'm sorry. I wasted it. I wasted the food." "You didn't waste anything. There's more. There's always going to be more." Amari looked up at her, tears and snot and disbelief. "Always?" "Always. Whenever you're hungry, you come to me, to Mike, to anybody, and we'll feed you. No questions, no punishment, just food." It took 3 more weeks before Amari stopped hiding crackers under her mattress. But she stopped. Eventually, she stopped. Malik was different. He attached to Tanya like a barnacle, followed her everywhere. Kitchen, bathroom, laundry room. If she was out of his sight for more than 30 seconds, he'd start screaming. That high, piercing wail that came from somewhere deeper than his little lungs should be able to reach. "Mama! Mama! Mama!" He called her Mama from the second day, didn't hesitate, didn't question. He needed a mother, and there she was, and that was enough for him. Tanya didn't correct him, didn't tell him to wait for the adoption, didn't explain that legally. She wasn't his mother yet. She just answered, every time. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." The bikers came in shifts. Every day, someone from the club would stop by. Sometimes just to check in. Sometimes to bring food. Sometimes to sit on the porch and make sure the house was safe. Tiny came every morning, all 400 pounds of him, sitting in the backyard, reading stories to Malik, in a voice so gentle it didn't seem like it could come from someone his size. He did all the character voices, made Malik laugh until he hiccuped. Rico came in the afternoons. He didn't talk much, didn't need to. He'd sit in the living room, cleaning his bike helmet or reading a magazine, just being present, just being there. Amari found his silence comforting. He never pushed, never asked questions, just existed in the same space as her. Doc came twice a week, checked Amari's feet, which were healing well, checked the burns on her back, which would scar but weren't infected, referred her to a pediatrician, a dentist, a therapist. The therapist was a black woman named Dr. Simone Carter. She had an office in downtown Macon with plants everywhere, and a couch so soft you sank into it like a cloud. She didn't push, didn't probe. Their first session, they just colored pictures together. Didn't talk at all. "She'll open up when she's ready," Dr. Carter told Tanya afterward. "The worst thing we can do is force it." She's been forced to do things her whole life. Now she needs to learn she has choices. The nightmares came every night. Amari would wake up screaming, thrashing. Sometimes she'd fall out of bed. Sometimes she'd claw at her throat, like she was being choked all over again. Big Mike was always there. He'd hear her through the baby monitor Tanya had set up. He'd be in her room within seconds, no matter what time it was. He didn't touch her at first, learned not to after the first time when she'd hit and kicked and screamed louder. He just sat on the floor beside her bed and talked. "You're safe, Amari. You're in your room, the one with the butterflies. I'm here. Tanya's here. Malik's sleeping right next to you. Nobody's gonna hurt you." He'd repeat it over and over until she stopped shaking, until her eyes focused, until she remembered where she was. Sometimes it took 10 minutes. Sometimes it took an hour. He stayed every time, no matter how long. "Why do you stay?" she asked him one night, 3 weeks in. Her voice was hoarse from screaming. Her eyes were red. "Why do you keep coming?" Big Mike looked at her. This tiny girl, who had been through more than most adults, could survive. This fierce little warrior who still checked the locks and hid food and slept with her shoes on. "Because you're worth staying for." She didn't say anything, just reached out and grabbed his hand. But something shifted in her eyes. Something that had been frozen for a long time started to thaw. The breakthrough came on a Sunday morning. Tanya was making pancakes, the special kind, with chocolate chips shaped into smiley faces. Malik was in his high chair, banging a spoon and demanding more orange juice. Big Mike was at the table, reading the newspaper like this was any normal Sunday. Amari was standing in the doorway, watching. She'd been doing that a lot lately, standing at the edges of rooms, observing, like she was studying them, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Tanya flipped a pancake, caught Amari's eye, smiled. "Morning, sunshine. You want chocolate chips or blueberries today?" Amari stepped into the kitchen, slow, careful. She walked to the counter where Tanya was working, stood beside her, close, but not quite touching. Then she leaned her head against Tanya's arm. Just for a second, just the smallest weight. And she whispered something so quiet, Tanya almost didn't hear it. "Mama Tanya." Tanya's hand stopped moving. The spatula froze in midair. "What did you say?" "Baby?" Amari looked up at her, those big brown eyes still too old for her face, but softer now, less guarded. "Mama Tanya, that's what Malik calls you. Is it okay if I do too?" The tears came before Tanya could stop them, rolling down her cheeks, dripping onto the pancakes, and she didn't care. "Oh, baby." She set down the spatula and wrapped both arms around Amari, held her tight, felt those little arms wrap around her waist and squeeze back. "You can call me whatever you want, whenever you want, for as long as you want." Amari buried her face in Tanya's apron, breathed in the smell of pancakes and cocoa butter and safety. "Mama Tanya," she said again, testing it out, feeling how it felt in her mouth. It felt right. It felt like coming home. From the table, Big Mike lowered his newspaper. He was crying too. Didn't bother to hide it. Didn't need to. "Does this mean I can be Daddy Mike?" he asked. Amari looked at him, studied him for a long moment. "Not yet," she said, "but maybe soon." Big Mike nodded, smiled through his tears. "I can wait. I'm good at waiting." Stories like Amari's remind us why we do this. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Because every view, every share, every comment helps us prove that the world is full of unexpected heroes. Weeks became months. The changes were slow at first. So slow, you almost couldn't see them day to day. But when you stepped back and looked, really looked, they were everywhere. Amari gained weight. The sharpness left her cheeks. The hollows under her eyes filled in. She grew 2 inches between December and March, and Tanya had to buy her new clothes twice. The boots came off sometime in February. Amari didn't make a big deal about it, just came down to breakfast one morning in fuzzy socks and didn't say a word. Tanya didn't mention it either, just smiled into her coffee and let the moment exist. The food hoarding stopped. The lock-checking slowed to once a night, then twice a week, then not at all. Amari started sleeping through the night. Not every night, but most. The nightmares still came, but they were quieter now, shorter. She'd wake up, look around, remember where she was, and go back to sleep. She started laughing. The first time it happened, a real laugh, not the nervous giggle she'd used to deflect. Big Mike almost dropped his wrench. He'd been working on his bike in the garage, and Amari was watching, and Malik had tried to stick his finger in the gas tank. "Malik! No!" She'd grabbed him around the waist and pulled him back, and he'd squirmed and giggled, and she'd started tickling him. And before anyone knew what was happening, both kids were on the garage floor laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. It was the most beautiful sound Big Mike had ever heard. "What?" Amari asked when she noticed him staring. "Nothing, just nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. School started in January. Amari had missed most of first grade. The tests showed she was behind in reading and math, but not as far behind as anyone expected. She was smart. Scary smart, Dr. Carter said. Her brain had just been too busy surviving to focus on learning. The first day was hard. Tanya walked her to the classroom, held her hand at the door, watched her disappear into a sea of other 6-year-olds. "She's going to be okay," Big Mike said. He'd driven separately, parked where Amari could see his bike through the window, just in case. I know. Amari made one friend that first week. A girl named Destiny with beads in her braids and a gap-toothed smile. They bonded over a shared love of purple crayons and a mutual suspicion of the boy who picked his nose at lunch. By March, she had 3 friends. By May, she was getting invited to birthday parties. She was still protective, fierce almost, about certain things. When a bigger kid pushed Malik on the playground, Amari was on him like lightning. Didn't hit. Didn't need to. Just got in his face and said, in a voice cold enough to freeze fire, "That's my brother. Touch him again, and you'll regret it." The kid never touched Malik again. Nobody at that school did. Therapy continued twice a week. Dr. Carter and Amari graduated from coloring to talking, then to something called play therapy, where Amari could act out scenarios with dolls and puppets. It helped. Slowly but surely, it helped. The club embraced both children completely. They were the Cubs now, unofficial mascots of the Iron Guardians. Every member knew their names, knew their stories, knew to bring Amari a book and Malik a toy car whenever they stopped by. Christmas was a revelation. Amari had never had a real Christmas, not one she could remember. Presents were things other kids got. Trees with lights were things she saw through other people's windows. This year was different. Big Mike in Tanya's living room looked like a toy store had exploded, wrapping paper everywhere. A tree so covered in lights and ornaments you could barely see the green. Stockings hung on the fireplace, 4 of them now, with Amari and Malik stitched in gold thread next to Mike and Tanya. Amari stared at the pile of presents with her name on them, didn't touch them, didn't move. "Go on, baby," Tanya said. "They're for you." "All of them?" "All of them." She opened each one slowly, carefully, smoothing out the wrapping paper instead of tearing it. She saved every bow, every ribbon, every tag. Later, Tanya would find them all arranged in a shoebox under Amari's bed, keepsakes, evidence that this had really happened. Malik had no such hesitation. He dove into his presents like a tiny tornado, paper flying everywhere, shrieking with joy at every new discovery. Big Mike sat in his recliner, watching both children. Tanya was beside him, her head on his shoulder. "This is the best Christmas we've ever had," she whispered. He couldn't argue with that. By spring, Malik had started calling Big Mike Daddy Mike. It happened naturally, slipped out while they were playing in the backyard. "Daddy Mike, watch me!" He swung higher on the swing, legs pumping, face pure joy. Big Mike caught the chain and slowed him down, lifted him off the seat, held him up to the sky. "I saw. You flew, little man. You flew." A week later, Amari used the same name, quieter, more deliberate, testing the waters. "Daddy Mike?" "Yeah, baby girl? Can you teach me to ride a motorcycle?" He laughed, a real laugh from deep in his belly. "When you're older, much older. But I can teach you about them, how they work, what all the parts do." "Okay." She paused. "Daddy Mike?" "Yeah? I'm glad you stayed." He knelt down, eye level, just like he had that first night in the parking lot. "I'm glad I stayed too." Tanya taught Amari how to braid hair. They'd sit on the bed for hours, Tanya's fingers working through Amari's thick curls, teaching her the patterns. "Your mama never taught you?" Amari shook her head. She was always tired, or sleeping, or she didn't finish, didn't need to. "Well, now you know, and someday you can teach your daughter." Amari thought about that, a daughter, a future, a someday. For the first time in her life, she could imagine having one. 7 months in, the call came. Big Mike's phone rang at 3 a.m. Blocked number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, slurred with alcohol, or something worse. "You think you won, you piece of—" Big Mike's blood went cold. Curt. "Those are my kids. Mine. You can't keep them forever. I know people, lawyers. I'll get them back. And when I do, I'll make that little bitch pay for—" Big Mike hung up. Called Detective Martinez immediately. Played her the voicemail that showed up 30 seconds later. Curt had left a message after the hang-up, rambling and threatening and stupid enough to put himself back on the radar. What Big Mike didn't know was that Amari had been standing in the hallway. She'd gotten up for water. She'd heard everything. When he turned around, she was there, face pale, eyes wide, the old fear back in full force. He's coming back. Her voice was flat, dead. The same voice she'd used in the diner 8 months ago. He's going to come back and take us and kill us. Big Mike crossed the hallway in 2 steps, knelt down, took her hands. Look at me, Amari. Look at my eyes. She looked, trembling. He's not coming back. He's not taking you anywhere. That call? That was a stupid drunk man making stupid drunk threats. He just broke his protection order. That means the cops are going to find him. That means he's going to jail. But what if? No what ifs. I promised you, remember? That first night, I said we got you. Forever. Did I lie? She shook her head slowly. Have I ever lied to you? Another shake. Then believe me now. He's done. He's over. He's never going to hurt you again. She was crying now. Tears she'd been holding back for months. I don't want to be scared anymore, Daddy Mike. I'm tired of being scared. He pulled her into his arms, held her while she sobbed. I know, baby girl, I know. And you know what? Being scared means you're brave. Because brave people feel the fear and do the thing anyway. And you're the bravest person I've ever met. Martinez found Kurt 3 weeks later, hiding in a motel outside Jacksonville. He was arrested on violation of the protection order, plus new charges from the threatening voicemail. Combined with his previous charges, he was looking at serious time. But Amari wanted something more. I want to see him, she told Big Mike. In court, I want to tell them what he did. Not what the lawyer wrote, what I want to say. Big Mike looked at Tanya, at Dr. Carter, at everyone who had helped this child put herself back together. You sure? You don't have to. The case is solid without you. I know, but I want to. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were clear. He made me scared to talk for so long. Now I want him to hear me. The courtroom was packed. 50 bikers in full colors filled the gallery, standing room only. The judge had tried to limit attendance, but there was no law against citizens observing public proceedings, and these citizens weren't going anywhere. Kurt sat at the defense table. He looked smaller than Amari remembered, thinner, pale from months on the run and weeks in county jail. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, and he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. When it was time for victim impact statements, Amari walked to the front of the courtroom. She wore a blue dress Tanya had bought her, and her hair was in the braids she'd learned to do herself, and she carried Button, the one-eyed teddy bear, for courage. The prosecutor had prepared a statement for her. Sanitized, appropriate, legally careful. Amari didn't use it. My name is Amari Jackson Mitchell, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. I'm 7 years old now. I was 6 when that man, she pointed at Kurt, and he flinched, hurt me, hurt my brother, killed my mama slow with pills and meanness. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge had stopped writing. He burned me, hit me, did things at night I'm not supposed to talk about yet because the therapist says I need to wait till I'm older to understand them all the way. Tanya was crying. Big Mike's hands were white-knuckled on his knees. He made me think I was nothing, made me think nobody would ever want me, made me think the only way to survive was to be small and quiet and invisible. She looked at Kurt now, looked him right in the eyes. But I'm not nothing. I'm not invisible. And I'm not scared of you anymore. Kurt looked away first. His shoulders shook. He might have been crying. Nobody cared. I have a real family now. A mama and a daddy who love me. A brother who's learning his ABCs. A whole bunch of uncles in leather who check on me every day. She lifted her chin. You tried to break me. You didn't. And you never will. She turned to the judge. Please don't ever let him out. Please don't ever let him hurt another kid like he hurt me. The judge cleared her throat, wiped her eyes. Thank you, Amari. I think that's the bravest thing I've ever heard in this courtroom. The sentence came down an hour later. 15 years. No possibility of parole for 10. Kurt collapsed in his chair, started crying, started begging. Nobody listened. They walked out of the courthouse together, Amari holding Big Mike's hand on one side and Tanya's on the other. Malik was with Rico, sitting on his shoulders, waving at everyone like a parade. But the day wasn't over. Judge Hendricks had expedited something, pulled strings, made calls. At 4:17 p.m. in her chambers, with 50 bikers and one teddy bear as witnesses, she made it official. By the power vested in me by the state of Georgia, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Amari and Malik Jackson are now, legally and permanently, Amari and Malik Jackson Mitchell, children of Michael and Tanya Mitchell. The gavel fell. Amari didn't flinch this time. She smiled. It's over? She asked, just like she had all those months ago. It's over, Tanya said. You're ours, forever. Forever, Big Mike echoed. Amari looked at them, at the room full of bikers cheering, at her little brother clapping his hands and not understanding what had happened, but knowing it was good. And for the first time in her life, she believed in forever. They walked out of Judge Hendricks's chambers into the late afternoon sun. Amari wore a brand new leather vest over her blue dress, 2 sizes too big. The sleeves hung past her wrists. The bottom hit her thighs, but she wouldn't take it off, wouldn't even let anyone adjust it. On the back, stitched in gold thread against the black leather, property of Iron Guardians, Massey, beloved daughter. She'd seen the vests on the men all these months, seen the patches, the colors, the pride they wore on their backs, and now she had her own. Tiny had made it for her, stayed up 3 nights hand-stitching every letter. When he'd presented it to her, in the courthouse hallway, his huge hands shaking, she'd put it on and hadn't taken it off since. It's too big, Tanya had said gently. I'll grow into it. And that was that. She walked through the courthouse doors, with her head high and her shoulders back and her tiny black boots clicking on the marble floor. No tears, no fear. Just a 7-year-old girl who had survived hell and come out the other side wearing armor made of leather and love. Malik rode on Big Mike's shoulders. He was waving at everyone, the bailiff, the security guard, a woman waiting for the elevator, a potted plant. Everyone and everything got a wave. Look at me, he shouted. I'm so high up. You're king of the world, little man. King, king, I'm the king. Big Mike laughed. The sound echoed through the courthouse lobby. A few people looked up, startled by the sight of this massive biker with a child on his shoulders, surrounded by 50 more bikers in full colors. But nobody complained. Nobody called security. They parted like the Red Sea and let the family through. Outside, the sun was setting gold and orange over Macon, and there, in the courthouse parking lot, were 25 Harley-Davidsons in a perfect line, engines rumbling, chrome gleaming, ready. The club had come to escort them home, not just Big Mike's immediate brothers, everyone, prospects, old-timers, members who'd driven 3 hours just to be here. They lined both sides of the parking lot like an honor guard. Bikes pointed toward the street. Amari stopped on the courthouse steps, stared. "All of them?" "All of them," Tanya said. "For you, for your brother, for this family." Rico revved his engine. The rumble rose. One by one, the others joined in. The sound built and built until it was like thunder rolling across the parking lot, like an earthquake, like the voice of God saying, "Here, here are your people, and they will never let you go." Amari's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back, smiled instead. "Let's go home." That night, after cake and celebration, and Malik falling asleep in a pile of stuffed animals, Big Mike called Amari into the living room. He was sitting in his recliner. In his hands was a shadow box, simple wood frame, glass front. Inside, mounted on black velvet, was a faded pink hoodie. Amari's pink hoodie. The one she'd been wearing that night. The one with her blood still speckling the fabric. The one Tanya had washed 1,000 times, but the faint brown stains never quite came out. "I want you to have this," Big Mike said. Amari took the shadow box, held it carefully, looked at the hoodie through the glass. She remembered wearing it, remembered how the sleeves swallowed her hands, remembered how it was the only warm thing she owned, remembered how it felt against her skin when Kurt's hand closed around her throat. "Why?" she asked. "Why would I want to remember?" Big Mike leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes on hers. "Some people try to forget where they came from. I understand that. Sometimes the past is so ugly, so painful, you just want to bury it and never look back." He reached out and touched the glass, right over one of the faded bloodstains. "But here's the thing, baby girl. What happened to you? It's not your shame. It's his. You survived it. You beat it. You came out stronger than anyone had a right to expect." His voice got rough, thick. "This hoodie isn't about remembering the pain. It's about remembering how far you've come. About never forgetting that little girl who stood barefoot in a parking lot and asked strangers for help. She was brave. She was strong. And she became you." Amari stared at the hoodie, at the stains, at all the darkness it represented. "What do I do with it?" "Keep it. Put it somewhere you can see it. And when you're older, when you're grown and strong and helping other kids the way we helped you, you show it to them. You tell them your story. You prove to them that no matter how bad it gets, there's always a way through." He sat back. "And then you help the next one." Amari was quiet for a long time. The clock ticked on the wall. Malik snored softly from the other room. Outside, a car drove past, headlights sweeping across the curtains. Then she looked up at Big Mike, at this man who had stopped his motorcycle in a gas station parking lot and changed her entire life. "I will," she said. It was a promise. The kind she'd learned from him. The kind she'd never break. 10 years later, the day after Thanksgiving, the temperature in Macon dropped to 36 degrees. Amari Jackson Mitchell was 16 years old. She stood 5'7" now, with long braids that flew behind her when she moved, and her mother's cheekbones and her father's stubborn jaw. She wore her leather vest every time she rode, the same one Tiny had made her all those years ago. She'd grown into it just like she said she would. She was sitting on the back of Big Mike's Harley at the front of the pack. 25 bikes behind them. Same as always. Same as that first night. But nothing else was the same. Big Mike was 61 now, Gray had taken over his beard completely. His back hurt more than it used to. He moved a little slower, laughed a little easier, cried at commercials he would have mocked 20 years ago. Tanya said he'd gone soft. He said he'd gone wise. Same thing, probably. The annual toy run had become something bigger than anyone expected. What started as 25 bikers delivering presents to one shelter had grown into a county-wide operation. 300 bikes this year, 14 stops. Thousands of toys collected by churches, businesses, schools. The Iron Guardians had an official child advocacy arm now. Guardian Angels, they called it. They worked with CPS, with the police, with family courts. They showed up for kids who had no one else to show up for them. They sat in courtrooms and stood on porches and made sure no child felt as alone as Amari had felt. It had all started that cold November night. One moment of intervention that had rippled outward for a decade. Amari volunteered at the foster care center twice a week. She was too young to be a formal mentor, but that didn't stop her. She helped with homework, played games, braided hair, listened. "You're going to be a social worker, aren't you?" Dr. Carter had asked her last month. "Yes, ma'am, as soon as I can. I want to be the person I needed when I was 6. She'd already started taking psychology courses at the community college, dual enrollment, early admission. She had the grades for it, and the drive for it, and the kind of lived experience no textbook could ever teach. Malik was 13 now, tall and skinny, all elbows and knees, voice cracking every other sentence. He was on the honor roll, played drums in the school band, had a girlfriend he was too embarrassed to talk about, and a best friend named Deshaun, who practically lived at their house. He called Big Mike Dad now. No Mike attached. Hadn't used the full name in years. The Daddy Mike had just naturally shortened, the way children's names for their parents do when the relationship becomes as natural as breathing. He didn't remember much about before. He'd been 3. His memories of Kurt were more feeling than image, a vague sense of cold and fear that had long since faded. He knew the story, knew what had happened. But it wasn't his trauma the way it was Amari's. And that was okay. That was good. That was exactly how it should be. Big Mike in Tanya's house was full of photos now. Amari's first day of school, Malik's band concerts, birthday parties and Christmases and ordinary Tuesday nights turned into frozen moments. Their grown children came by often, bringing grandchildren who called Amari and Malik auntie and uncle, even though they weren't blood-related. But family wasn't about blood. The Mitchell house had proven that 1,000 times over. The toy run ended at the same Shell station on Pio Nono Avenue. They'd made it a tradition. Every year, the last stop, full circle. A crowd had gathered, families, children, people who'd heard about what the Guardians did and wanted to see for themselves. Local news had a camera there. The mayor had given a proclamation. It was a whole thing now. But Amari wasn't looking at the cameras or the crowd. She was looking for the one. Every year, there was one. The child hanging back at the edges. The one who flinched when adults moved too fast. The one with eyes too old for their face. This year, it was a little boy, 5, maybe 6, standing behind his foster mother's legs, peeking out like the world might bite him if he showed too much of himself. Amari walked over, slow, calm. She crouched down the way Big Mike had taught her, made herself small, kept her hands visible. "Hey there." The boy didn't answer. just watched her with those big, wary eyes. "I'm Amari." "What's your name?" "Jalen." His voice was barely a whisper. She knew that voice. She'd had it once. "Hi, Jalen. I've got something for you." She held out a teddy bear. Simple brown fur, black button eyes. Nothing special, except for what it represented. The boy looked at the bear, at Amari, at the bear again. "For me?" "For you, just for you." He reached out slowly, took it, held it against his chest like it might disappear if he didn't hold on tight enough. Amari smiled, felt the sting of tears she wouldn't let fall. "Can I tell you something, Jalen? A secret?" He nodded. She leaned in close, close enough to whisper, close enough that only he could hear. "I was like you once, scared, hurt. Didn't think anybody could help me. But then some people showed up. People who looked really scary, but had the biggest hearts I've ever seen. And they told me something I didn't believe at first." She put her hand on his shoulder, gentle, light. "You are safe now, baby. We got you, forever." The words she'd heard in a parking lot 10 years ago. The words that had changed everything. Jalen's eyes went wide, then wet. Then he was crying, holding the teddy bear, and his foster mother was crying, and somewhere behind Amari, she could hear Big Mike clearing his throat the way he did when he was trying not to sob in public. She wrapped her arms around the little boy, held him while he shook. "It's gonna be okay," she whispered. "I promise. And I don't break promises." Later that night, after the toy run was done, and the news vans had left, and the crowd had gone home, Amari sat in her room. The shadow box hung on the wall above her bed. Same place it had been for 10 years. The pink hoodie inside, faded and stained and perfect. Sometimes, when the nightmares came, and they still came, even now, even after everything, she would touch the glass. Feel the cool surface under her fingers. Remember, not the pain, not the fear, not the monster who had tried to break her. She remembered the sound, 25 Harleys rolling into a gas station parking lot like heaven's own army. Engines dying one by one. Boots hitting pavement. A voice like thunder saying, "Take your hand off that baby, right now." She remembered being lifted up when she thought she'd never stand again. She remembered that family isn't always blood. Heroes don't always wear capes. And sometimes, the scariest-looking people in the room are the only ones brave enough to help. Thank you for riding with us today. If you believe that sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts, subscribe to Biker's Bite. Tell us in the comments. What would you have done? And remember, the rumble you hear might not be trouble. It might be help on the way. Some monsters think children are weak. Some angels are 6'5" and wear cuts that say 1%er. And Amari Jackson, tiny, scarred, unbreakable, will never be afraid of big hands again, because she knows exactly whose they are.